All right, we are live. How you doing? Greetings, salutations. Come on in. Maybe I need to move this a little bit closer to me. Um, yeah, my setup is slightly different. If you're noticing, it's okay. Um, it may change tomorrow, may change the next day. I'm not really sure. Um, I am setting up for a musical live stream tonight. If any of you are interested, um, if you have an Instagram account, uh, you can follow me at Kevin Sandbloom, and I'll be doing at 5 p.m. Pacific time. I'll be doing a little live stream of music today. If you don't have an Instagram account, just make one. It's really not that hard. Um, if you can negotiate YouTube, you can totally negotiate Instagram. Just really not that difficult. Anyways, yeah. Yes, there's a little vegetation behind me. You get a little bit of the outdoor view for now. Cindy Silly, thank you. I appreciate you. Yeah, once again, live stream tonight on my Instagram channel at Kevin Sandbloom at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So tune in, just a couple of tunes if y'all want to tune in. Welcome back to Black Bear News. And please remember to like the video. Please remember to make sure that you are still subscribed. And we are going to continue to talk about how everything is connected. Hope you all are doing good today, enjoying your Saturday morning. Renee, hello from Costa Rica. Renee says 263 people here have it. There's a curfew and most things are closed a few weeks ago. Rich Diana, Trump is verbally ejaculating that everything's under control. Vote for me. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a hard situation because I think and this is not to excuse Trump's ridiculousness on any level, right? Because Trump is totally ridiculous. I mean, has did away with the pandemic response office, or whatever it was that was designed to deal with things like this. He had done away with that a few years ago in his presidency. So, and the way that he kind of played down the pandemic from the beginning is, obviously not cool. And his actions still seem to be, don't seem to be, but his actions are still getting in the way of actually taking, what to some would be appropriate and substantial action. But that doesn't mean that we're not taking no action. We're definitely taking, we as a country, and Trump as a president, there's definitely action going on. So there's stimulus bills being done, corporate bailouts that they are. They're, I guess, trying, at least in performatively trying to get people help. The thing is that we know that in hindsight, what happened during the last recession, the Great Recession, was pretty much the same thing. So, that happened under Obama, and plenty of people think that was fine. That was totally fine what Obama did, right? Because partisanship. Plenty of Republicans and plenty of Trump supporters think he's doing a great job, doing fine. He's doing fine. Where he is failing. And plenty of Democrats thought Obama was doing fine, where he was failing the people. The TARP the TARP bill that was passed was a huge ripoff of the American people. It was a funneling of wealth towards the 1%, upward towards businesses and banks and financial institutions, and towards people with a lot of money. A lot of people lost their homes. A lot of people lost their jobs, never to regain a good paying job with benefits, for years, a decade or more after that. They screwed over the American people in 2008, and they're doing it again right now. So if you think that there's really any difference between what a Democratic president would be doing, say Joe Biden or Barack Obama, and what Trump is doing, I don't know. You might just be a partisan hack human being. They're both bad, and they're both worthy of plenty of criticism. So, Boiled Rope Lamppost says New Orleans becoming a hotspot after Mardi Gras. Yeah, and I'm hearing, people. There's quite a few cases in Florida because there were a lot of spring breakers and people were still partying, and a lot of people just really did not take this very seriously in the beginning. And, much to their, detriment health-wise. Rich Diana, the rats are running rampant down here. Are you in Louisiana? Or New Orleans? Renee Michelle, Obama was awful. Yes. Obama was awful, but he didn't, he didn't say mean things on Twitter, and didn't, he wasn't a verbal, I don't know what you'd call it. He wasn't a verbal ejaculator, but he said really nice things and very calm, cool, and collected things, and still raped people, anyways. So, and still did extremely shitty things, anyways. So there you go. Poppy Davis, hello. So, a few people pointed out that, in my video yesterday in the article that, about the hedge fund taking $1 billion bet against the market, that it wasn't very much money, and it wasn't a big, that probably was just something that they would do anyways. Fair enough. I'll give you that point. However, my point in reading that article was, it seemed to be that the timing was interesting. Could they have just made a good guess? Totally. Excuse me. But here, here's another interesting story, kind of along the same lines. Jeff Bezos sold $3.4 billion of Amazon stock just before the COVID-19 collapse. So there, we're seeing not just politicians, but very wealthy, powerful people pretty much knew that something was coming. How long ago did they have inside information? We don't really know. So Jeff Bezos sold a bunch of shares before, in February. He sold $3.4 billion worth of Amazon shares in the first week of February, just before the stock price peaked. There's no suggestion that Bezos acted improperly by selling the shares, or he was acting on non-public information. Nope. No suggestion at all. But the timing was near perfect. The stock was as much as he had sold in the previous 12 months. I'm taking that to be combined. In total, U.S. executives sold about $9.2 billion in shares of the companies they run in the 5 weeks before the start of the stock market rout. Wow. Well, either they're very, smart business people, uh, and they saw this coming, and they knew how bad it was going to be. Um, and then on top of that, the stock market has taken an upswing in the last week, so he made more money then. Amazon stock went up. Um, we'll call that just, the luck of the rich. Harley Canine says, "Hey Kev, sitting guarding the entrance doors of the hospital today." Wow. Guarding because people are trying to get in, or people are trying to get out, or what's going on? Are you just trying to keep people from freaking out? I don't know. Renee Michelle says, "See Event 201." Indeed, I've talked about Event 201. Anybody wants to look that up? It's actually freely available on the internet. Just search it. So this was something that happened, I believe, in October. Was it September or October? I don't know, of last year. Basically running a simulation of a pandemic and what would happen. Interestingly enough, a few months before a pandemic actually happens, and did all these, wealthy individuals know that something was coming? Magical Thinking Barbie says, "I was watching Agenda Free TV. I heard about it back around early January." So there you go. There you go. I myself didn't really see anybody, necessarily doing big warnings until like February, early February, and honestly, I was like, I don't know about this. I don't know what's happening. Maybe this will die out in a couple weeks, or maybe this will just be something that will end when the news cycle ends. But no such thing, none such luck. Magical Thinking Barbie being the bug. The bug named after the beer. Yeah, well, I mean, it was actually something that started happening, I believe, in December, the first couple of cases. I mean, basically what happened was they had people getting pneumonia and dying of pneumonia, and they had a lot of cases of this, and they were, they didn't know why, they didn't know what it was from, and then they realized after looking into it that it was from, a new virus strain. Apparently this is how it started, how they started noticing that this was even happening. But I've even heard somebody actually sent me a video. This is interesting. A video about Iran. So there was a news story going around a couple of weeks ago about Iran digging mass graves for the dead. And then there was also the news stories about this happening in China. However, this woman was talking about the fact that they were digging these graves in October of last year. She said the word October. I don't know if she misspoke, but I was like, so wait a minute. If this was happening in October, who was talking about it? How were they talking about it? Were other people talking about it? Was this already a thing in October? Why did she say the words October, or the word October? I don't know. So I found that to be very interesting. It was one of those, oopsies, those little oopsie faux pas, like the British TV saying that Building 7 had collapsed 30 minutes before it actually collapsed. Oh, how did you know that? It hadn't actually happened yet. So, interesting, just an interesting kind of maybe slip there. I don't know. Harley Canine, no visitors, pre-screening for COVID, taking drop-offs for patients from family members, etc. Okay. I'm sure they're trying to keep things, under somewhat, control somewhat. Renee Michelle, my daughter was very sick for 3 weeks in early December with a terrible cough. Jenny Malloy, everyone was sick at my school in December and January. So, okay. And I will say, to add to that, that in January, at least, if not December, but at least in January, there was a flu going around that was incredibly rough, and everybody had it. Everybody was sick. Literally, when I was working and I was picking up people, every other person, probably more than every other person, like 2 out of 3 people were sick, like dog sick. Everybody was sniffling, sneezing, coughing, hacking, eyes running, and I was like, I'm so surprised that I didn't get sick myself. Everyone was sick. Everyone had a very intense flu. My son got the flu. His roommate got the flu at college. Had to go to the hospital. That's how bad the flu was for my son's roommate. A lot of people were very, very sick in the early winter. Is this any way in connection with the virus? I don't know. Nobody knows. There were reports that there were a couple of different strains of very bad flu virus going around. But Renee Michelle, I was also coughing for 2 solid weeks in December. Raza Remen, patient 0. Trump has been sniffing since November. Okay, well, Trump just kind of sniffs anyways. Karen Daly, good morning. Rich Diana said Iran was said to have killed 500 protesters a while back. Okay. And interesting, could be. Woody Moniker, I was very sick in December as well. So was my hubby. Magical Thinking Barbie, Spanish flu had 2 waves. Is this the second wave? Who knows? Who really knows what is actually happening? I mean, because there's so much conflicting information. I mean, we kind of have to, the only solid information we have is like what is widely known. Here's also some information if some of y'all haven't seen this yet. Apparently, ibuprofen and other anti-inflammatory drugs are not good to take if you have symptoms. Do not take ibuprofen if you get symptoms. Apparently, it makes it worse. So just letting you know, aspirin is probably a better bet. Boiled Rope Lamppost, Wuhan's been on lockdown since January 23rd. That was the red flag event. Basil, namaste, can't deal. Hello. Poppy Davis, I took a walk around my hood this morning. A lot of people outside in their yards. Everyone pretty excited to say hello. Actually, there's a lot of foot traffic in my neighborhood. A lot of dog walking. A lot of people just walking down the street. People are taking this opportunity with a lot of time home to just go for a walk, or take their dogs for a walk. Get out and look at the flowers. Get out and look at the greenery and the scenery. Osama, what's up? So yeah. Who knew what and when did they know it? We will probably start to get more information as this progresses, right? There's going to be a lot more information coming out as this goes on. So I was watching an interesting video this morning with the head of one of the hospitals in South Korea. And I don't know if I think he's a higher up in the health ministry or whatever they call it in South Korea. I'm not sure. Anyways, he was saying that they are seeing people getting reinfected. So this idea about immunity or herd immunity is actually not correct so far. So there actually isn't a clear sign that you are immune if you contract this. So if you do get this disease, if you do contract this virus, probably it's best to continue to be very careful. It's, take care of yourself and do not get reinfected. This was as of 4 days ago when this video was made, or this interview was published. So people are getting reinfected, and there is a possibility of reinfection. There is a possibility of more waves of this. Yes. Yeah. Ibuprofen, anti-inflammatory, is not good for this. Vitamin D, vitamin C, definitely lots of vitamin C and D are good. Zinc, garlic, yes. Rosaraman, thank you. I'm also hearing conflicting reports around the drugs that they're saying that can treat this, mainly chloroquine or hydrochloroquine. Some people are saying that it will kill you. So, best, there's a lot of conflicting information around that. So I don't know what to believe. I would say, stay far away unless you are being treated by a doctor. C is very, very helpful. D is very helpful. Okay, let's move on to some news stories. So, interesting stuff out of China. This is from Zero Hedge. Hubei residents riot after quarantine is lifted. So the quarantine has basically been lifted. I heard April, so it's not quite April yet. I don't know that they lifted it early or what. But police beaten with their own shield, cop cars overturned. So residents of Hubei province in China teamed up with their local police force to battle the police from neighboring Jiangxi province, who set up a roadblock on the Yangtze River Bridge to prevent the people of Hubei from crossing and returning to work. So they're, I guess they're just going to enforce their own quarantine. They're afraid that people from Hubei are going to come over and infect people or reinfect people. Footage of Hubei residents overturning Jiangxi police vehicles was captured and uploaded to Chinese social media, where Chinese authorities have reportedly already scrubbed it. So there's lots of videos, basically like Twitter videos of this going on. So I'll link this in the description box so you guys can check this out. It's pretty wild stuff. And in other news regarding the bailout package, that was just signed. It was actually signed, so that's good. It's signed, which means, I guess the quicker they sign it, the quicker people get things. However, this is mainly being seen, this entire bailout package is mainly being seen as a corporate giveaway. As with TARP, as with the 2008 stimulus bill, this is being seen as a huge corporate giveaway with very, very little given to the American people. And it's very uncomfortable and disconcerting to hear that, what's coming out also around this is that most of the Democrats, especially even and including Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and the progressives, all voted to support this bill. And I guess you could excuse them on the fact that they were trying to just get something done quickly. They didn't want to be seen as, terrible people for holding up some kind of relief to middle Americans. However, there are a lot of pundits out there basically saying that they could have fought much harder. They could have actually voted no. The bill still would have passed, but they could have voted no. against all the stimulus that was included, the corporate stimulus that was included in the bill. And on top of that, what I'm hearing now, the thing that I brought up the other day about Bernie Sanders, saving this unemployment benefit that was supposed to, it's still happening. The unemployment benefit is an extra $600 a week for everybody that files for unemployment. I think it's going to last for about 4 months, which is a good thing. He did not save that. He actually had nothing to do with that. He just made a speech about it, and apparently everybody thought that he was responsible for saving it. He was not. Actually, it was Trump. There were Mitch McConnell and a few other people were going to vote against it or try and strike that. However, Trump and Steve Mnuchin were both against striking this as well. So actually, Trump wasn't for striking the extra unemployment money, and they were actually against it, and they were going to let it. They were going to strike down this amendment anyways. So it had no chance of passing. Bernie Sanders or not. Apparently, this was just a performance by Bernie Sanders. And everybody, basically believed the story that he had saved this and he had, very little to do with it. So, the more I hear about the lack of resistance in the House and the Senate by the progressives and the Democrats, the entire Democratic and progressive wing of both parties, the more I'm disheartened and disenchanted with the political system in general, and the so-called people who are were apparently on our side or more on our side. They seem to be only more on our side in words only. So yeah. And there are a lot of people talking about this. If you've been following Jimmy Dore, and please follow Jimmy Dore. He's got a lot of very good information about what's going on and what's going into this bill that was just passed. Again, it's just more of a corporate giveaway, more of a bank bailout. Very, very little for the people. It's some. Not much of anything though, because people are still going to lose their jobs and still lose their houses. Again, over 3 million people applied for unemployment, which is 5 times the record, in the history of the United States. So, that is just an earth-shattering record of number of people applying for unemployment. Bobby Davis says, I don't think I can get any more disenchanted. Gene says U.S. citizens should feel insulted. They are throwing you scraps from their overflowing table. Again, yes. The rich are fine. The wealthy are fine. The powerful are fine. Those in the government are fine. Those in the banking sector are fine. I mean, the banking sector is more than fine. Most of these people were tipped off that something was happening before anyways, and they unloaded all their stocks. We're not going to see, or we're not seeing so far, any, major financial institutions going under. We're not seeing any bankers being held to there's nothing for them to be held to justice for, not yet anyways. And we're probably not going to see any Congress people being, held to justice for making trades before all of this went down. So yeah, a little bit different from 2008 in the fact that, so far there's no corporations or no large businesses going under or going out of business. No investment bankers or hedge fund managers or Congress people, being arrested and tried for malfeasance. Nothing like that is happening. This is just a straight up corporate bailout, and it happened lickety split. Yeah. So Gene, is a very good question. Any news on a general strike yet to demand Medicare for all or other basic human rights? Well, how can we do that? Everybody's locked down. It's very difficult to apply any pressure to the government right now because you can't really get out in the streets. And everybody's supposed to be locked down anyway, so you can't actually have a general strike. What we have is an enforced strike. Nobody's working. Nobody's coming out of their houses. I don't know if you have any ideas about a way to, inflict or, put some kind of pressure on the elite or the powerful. I don't really know of any at the moment. There's no way we can withhold our dollars or our labor or our cooperation at the moment. It's very, very difficult. We're in a pretty much an untenable position right now because there's no way for us to boycott. There's no way for us to really hold power over the elite. If anybody has any ideas, please let me know. My best idea right now is to maybe boycott some industries. Possibly what we can do is threaten to extend our stay-at-home strike, right? So those that might be involved in essential services maybe could strike. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. Everybody's really just dealing with, a health crisis, a pandemic, so I don't know. Human says, talk tactics, be creative, prepare to stop evictions on April 1st, keep your rent, tell your neighbors to keep theirs too. That's one of the things that I've seen people advocate is to don't pay rent, keep your rent. Yeah, sure. That's one way to do it, unless I know people who are landlords, though, and they rely on that rent for their income, or they rely on that rent to pay their mortgages. So I don't know. It depends on who you're withholding rent from. Are you withholding rent from an investment group or, a holding company or, someone like that? Or are you withholding rent from a private person who just owns a house, who is, just has an income stream from their ownership of this house? I don't know. Stephen Davidson asks, anything on student loans? Have no idea. I haven't seen anything about that. I don't know that there's any student loan relief. I haven't seen any. Boiled rope lamppost, gas strike, but nobody's traveling. Not many people are going anywhere. So, and gas is, going down, down, down. So, look, I'm not saying that we shouldn't actually come up with ways in which to pressure the people in power. We should. Now is a good time to come up with very creative, very inventive ways to possibly pressure people in power. But it's very difficult because right now what we have is a looming, the looming threat of some kind of martial law. Already the government is in a place where implementing and enforcing martial law would not be that big of a step. It would be very easy to do. That's not saying that they're going to do that or threatening to do that. In fact, I was listening to Michael Tracy earlier, and he made a good point that, Trump is actually, he's talking about trying to get back to business and trying to open up. He's more concerned with business than with locking everything down. So he's actually not the one who's going to be like, oh, guys, we're going to start locking you down. It's more of the individual states are talking, individual states and municipalities are the ones that are locking things down. It's the governor of California. The Democratic governor of California is the one that threatened to enact a martial law if need be. But Trump is not really actually the one that's gearing up to do that. So I don't know. He seems very against it, honestly. It's other countries that are also, country by country, there's very different responses to this, right? There's, lockdowns, all out lockdowns. And then there's countries that are like, let's just test everybody. Also interesting in the video that I was watching about South Korea is that everybody in South Korea wears masks. So they're taking individual precautions much more seriously than places like the U.S. I see very few people with masks in the U.S. when I go out. If I go out to the store, if I go out, for whatever supplies, I see literally like 1 in 10 people wearing a mask and very few people wearing gloves. So people in the U.S. just don't really give a shit and aren't very worried about it. So there you go. But, is this a ramp? Is this an easy ramp up into something else? Absolutely, for sure. There are signs that things are getting worse, of course, that things are not necessarily getting back to normal in many places. South Korea is one of the few places I've seen that seems relatively calm and their cases are going down. So this whole time we're 40 minutes into the video and I haven't really talked about the title of this video. And I apologize to anybody who has been waiting for a discussion on the title of the video, but, I was, reading about the fact that we're seeing a widespread bleaching event, in the Great Barrier Reef. Here's another article from 20 hours ago. Even after a frigid winter, Arctic sea ice is still very low. So, climate change is still kind of, marching on. Climate change is already a very slow-moving, yet gigantic problem that is, moves forward, inches forward, slowly but surely, and doesn't really care much one way or the other whether we're having a global pandemic or not. Large parts of the U.S. experienced a pretty wimpy winter this year. Thanks to cold air staying parked over the Arctic, this made for a relatively frigid winter season in the high north, which is good for making sea ice, although Arctic sea ice this season reached its biggest extent since 2013. It's still significantly lower than it was 4 decades ago. The Arctic is the fastest warming region on Earth. And though there will always be fluctuating winters, sea ice is in deep decline. While this year's maximum sea ice extent was a bump up from the last few years, it is still well below average and far from conditions in the 1980s and 1990s. The bottom line is the Arctic is still trending over a long term toward less extensive ice cover throughout the year, but with year-to-year variations. So we are still actually below the 2010s mean sea ice. So wherever the average or the mean was a decade ago, we are below that average still, even though we had a highest extent we've had in 7 years. Extent, not necessarily volume or thickness. And if we do see some extra added warming because of a lack of aerosol masking, then we may see. I mean, as Australia and the global South saw a very warm summer, we may see a very warm summer ourselves. So the interesting thing in all of this is that with the pandemic going, very few. I see very few people talking about climate change. Obviously, climate change has now just fallen down. Climate change is always at the bottom. It seems like it's always at the bottom of the concerns list. But considering that we're experiencing an economic global meltdown, and we are also experiencing a global pandemic, which is fueling an economic global meltdown. Like, very few people seem to be concerned about climate change. However, the good news is that this entire global economic meltdown pandemic is actually reducing our emissions probably more than we could ever reduce emissions with any kind of protests or activism, or even concerted global effort, effort to reduce emissions that we had seen in the last, I don't know, in the last few decades. So we are getting action on climate change as a particularly good positive side effect of this entire situation. However, few people really want to talk about climate change at the moment. It seems to be very, very low on people's lists of concerns. So, where does this put the discussion of climate change for the immediate and into the near future? I think it probably will only start to matter when we start seeing, again, extreme weather events, especially if they impact our food supply, especially if they start to impact the economy as well. So I would imagine we're getting a little bit of a respite from extreme weather situations because, the wildfires are pretty much done in Australia. Although Australia is now experiencing food shortages due to their previous drought situation. So if we see, let's say this summer, we start seeing, very warm temperatures due to a lack of global dimming, and people start to really reel, maybe people and also food supply is starting to reel crop losses, perhaps, wildfires, perhaps. If we start to see these things ramp up because of more warming, then, obviously then climate change will come back into play as far as a talking point. But we don't really know yet. We're not there. We cannot foresee the future. We cannot predict the future. I don't know. For the time being, this seems to be the thing that's going to continue to really take up all of the space in our windshields, in our viewfinders, and that's pretty much where we're at. The other thing that some scientists and some climate change activists are doing are linking the actual virus to climate change itself, and I'm sure we'll probably see more discussion on this. Is this a product of climate change? I think a lot of people might say there's some evidence of that, or at least something to that argument. So the paradox is that right now nobody cares about climate change. However, the biggest climate change action that we've probably ever taken as a planet, synchronistically is happening because we've shut down the entire economy of the planet because of this pandemic. This pandemic has effectively become, the biggest climate change activist that this planet has ever seen so far. And I don't know what, where do you see the future? Where do people see the future of climate change activism, at least in the next year, over the next year? What do we, how does this fit into some kind of platform or continued interest now that everybody's forced inside? The Friday school strikes have been forced online. Maybe that's one way that we can keep some kind of activism going, is that, we all engage in the Friday school strikes. I don't know if anybody's doing any special live streams for that, but maybe what I can do is do like a special Friday live stream, schools, whatever, gas strike, school strike, climate strike Fridays, live stream, and we can raise awareness somehow that way, or keep the awareness up somehow that way. I don't know. That's all I got for the moment. If you guys have any big ideas, brilliant ideas, please send them my way. Raza Redmond says, COVID is a Sad Max picnic compared to a Mad Max coming down the line. Yeah, I've seen a few people suggest that this is just the beginning of something much worse. Very possible. Hang tight and hold on to your seats. Hold on to your booties. Don't hold on to anybody else's booties unless they have given you permission to hold on to their booties. Yeah, it's going to be, the entire climate change dilemma. The entire climate change discussion is going to change dramatically over the next year. And it will be interesting what the fallout, positive or negative, of this entire situation is on the climate change timeline. What does it do? Does it speed it up? Does it slow it down? Does it stay the same? Do all those things cancel each other out? Obviously scientists are going to be looking at the effects of this as well, measuring, the lack of industrial activity. What does that do in the long run for climate change? What is it doing? What are the processes happening? It's going to take a while to sift through this entire situation, because there's so many different factors in it. John Lundqvist, I will see you later. CB Unglesby says it's 84 degrees in the mountains of West Virginia. 84 degrees, sunny and humid, just a little above the norm. Is it for March in West Virginia? I would imagine that 84 degrees would be very, very warm. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Is that normal? Judy Truitt says, I see some familiar faces here. Hola. We had an unusually wet winter spring with 3 spring melts. I don't know where you're located, Judy, but good to know. Going South says 2 million infected by next week. Well, let's before I leave you, let's look at a couple of graphs. Somebody posted this graph on Facebook, and I will post it in the description box. So interesting graph of kind of the timelines of the virus through different countries. The United States still trending upward, 35% daily growth. Many countries still trending upward: France, Spain, Belgium, Netherlands, UK, at slower rates though than the United States. The United States seems to be the highest growth rate of all. Japan still trending up, but they're a much lower rate. So a few countries to look at that are kind of tapering off. Iran has had like a very slow taper down, but they are still trending upward. China went up, but they're at plateauing right now. Although I don't know how they're plateauing because they have quite a few, less cases per day. So it's a little strange that they've plateaued. South Korea, again, also plateauing. So those are countries to look at as far as how it's progressing in those countries and possibly getting better. China, yeah, again, same countries, just going through these graphs. Taiwan seems to be coming up. They stayed low for a while, but they seem to be gaining. And then just looking through the updates, coronavirus updates. This is an interesting something I saw earlier. So 650,000 cases. So going south, you may be right that we may see 2 million cases. 30,000 deaths. It is going exponentially upward. Here's something that's very, very concerning. They keep on talking about a 2 or 3% death rate. But if you look at closed cases, we are now at 18%. For people that have recovered versus expired, 18%. We are closing in on 20%. This would look to me to be the real death rate, right? This is the real mortality rate, not 3% or 2%. Deaths versus people who have recovered. Closed cases, 18%. That has jumped from, it was 13, then 14. It was slowly going up to 15. That jumped from 16 to 18% in I think in the last 2 days. That is very concerning. I am very concerned about that. I'm highly concerned about that. Also looking at United States, we're headed exponential. 12,000 new cases. We are leading the way with 116,000 cases, 12,000 new cases. That is very concerning. No other country is getting more than 10,000 cases a day. Spain at 6,500 cases. Italy 6,000. Germany 5,000. So Germany seems to be ramping up a little bit. Italy and the United States surpassing China in cases, total cases. 10,000 deaths in Italy with almost 1,000 new deaths. Wow. So this is very concerning, definitely. 4,000 new cases in France, 319 new deaths. Iran, 3,000 new cases. Iran and France looking. Spain has surpassed China with almost 6,000 deaths. France and Iran looking to surpass China very soon as well. Belgium also more than almost 2,000 new cases in Belgium. Turkey is going up, almost 2,000 new cases. So yeah, this is definitely climbing. Definitely climbing. So, the best that we can do is, stay lock down, stay at home, try and ride this out. Um, we are going, this is going to get worse before it gets better for sure. Um, Renee Michelle says it is a psychological test. You will all be scared into wanting the new adult CDC vaccine schedule. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm going to say ding, ding, ding on that. Yeah, there's nothing more frightening to me than forced vaccinations. They've been, in the United States, they've been giving them out for free in the past, right? In response to SARS or MERS or whatever, or the swine flu. Here, have a swine flu vaccine, or here, have a flu shot, which I avoid like the plague. Pardon the pun, but or not the pun, but you know what I'm saying. I avoid those like the plague. I do not want any kind of like forced vaccinations, but I suppose if you didn't get a vaccination, if they made it free and you chose to opt out, that you would be socially, ostracized, right? People would be, oh my God, you didn't get a vaccine. You're a crazy person. You can't get a job because you didn't get a vaccine. You can't apply for unemployment benefits because you didn't get a vaccine. You can't, whatever, right? You cannot participate in widespread normal life because you didn't get a vaccine. So there you go. That's a way to force everybody to get a vaccine. Going south, the UK Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, yes, his health minister, and Prince are all positive. CV positive. Gene says, time to learn to play a new instrument. Yeah. Well, I play a lot of instruments, but I always love to learn something new. I want to learn to play the trombone. That's my next goal. Yeah, guys, I am about to sign off. Sorry, Anthony, I see you just came in. Anthony, my latest CD will be out on Earth Day. The universe willing, April 22nd. So that is my release date. I will let you know about it. I have a new single from that record that I just released. If you want to go to my website, kevinsandbloom.com, you can go listen to it. Yes, I think playing the trombone, it's one of my favorite instruments. So, D Truth, Hardy Har. Thanks, man. Yeah, American Idol isn't really necessarily my speed, but I don't know. Maybe one day. All right, guys, I got to sign off. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. I will be back tomorrow, same bat channel, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. Until next time, peace.